back. You know the drill. We'll set up the discussion, show you the sources, share with you my problem for you to let me know what you think, and we'll talk about solutions, and then I'll come back in another video and discuss how we want to approach the problem. So this is about Taanis Daf Yotes in the Mishnah there. It distinguishes other calamities from the primary calamity of the Masechta, a drought, and talks about other calamities where the rules of how we respond to that, how we daven for that, differ. And at one point the Mishnah says the following. It says, Al elu masriyan b'Shabbos. For the following calamities were masriyan, which basically means we cry out as in a public gathering, we cry out in prayer together, even on Shabbos. If we have an Ir Shekifu Nachrim, city that's besieged by a hostile army, or Nar, threatened to be flooded by a river, or a Svina Miterefis B'Yam, ship that really doesn't look good, looks like it might sink. So dealing with major kinds of immediate situations of extreme danger. In these cases, we will get together and cry out in tefillah even on Shabbos. But Rabbi Yossi says we cannot. Even in these cases, we don't make an exception. Rather, le'ezra. We could cry out if that's going to help these people. Call the Coast Guard, for instance. But v'lo litz'aka. We can't get together, have a public crying out prayer session on Shabbos, even in these cases. So just to first set up the terminology here, Rashi in the Mishnah says the word masrin means through anenu, through the classic formula of tefillah for an eis tzara of anenu. We add that on fast days. But my understanding is that it means that we can't have a public assembly and daven together, like let's say today with we recite Tehillim, followed by Mishaberach or Avinu Malkeinu. We know that actually practically we don't do that on Yom Kippur. That we're saying that's the discussion here. Could we do that or not? No, we rule like the first opinion. Rabbi Yossi is saying that no, even in these dire situations, we can't have such a public prayer service. Both opinions clearly assume that, generally speaking, there's some kind of a problem with holding such a prayer service on Shabbos. So what is that issue? Why is there an assumption here that we shouldn't pray in this way on Shabbos? So I found a useful source for this from Rabbi Kaganoff. The link is there if you want to see the full page. But in the way I understand this, essentially, both reasons he brings from the commentaries both have to do with, they're both saying essentially that, in general, davening, certainly if it's for some crisis, or even just for one's own personal needs, conflicts with the spirit that we want for Shabbos. Whether it has to do with the idea of, not seeking out your own personal things, like the Navi says, or if it's just it could make us depressed. It's not in keeping with the spirit of Shabbos to do this, generally speaking. So that's the discussion here, is whether we should make an exception to that rule in these scenarios. The issue I want to try and explore with you is how to understand Rabbi Yossi's opinion. How do we understand why we wouldn't make an exception here? You have these people who are in extreme danger. It's a basic foundation of our religion that we are supposed to react to that with great, grave concern. This could be, fellow community members, but just the fact that they're fellow members of our people is supposed to give us great concern. And certainly a proper way to respond to that, other than obviously if we could do something to help physically through tefillah, is a basic Jewish response to a time of crisis. And Rabbi Yossi is basically denying that option on Shabbos. Rashi on Yudalid does explain. He says that we don't do this according to Rabbi Yossi. We don't say this tefillah she'einonu betuchen kol kach shetoel, because we can't be certain that it will help. And certainly that's true when we daven. We don't know. We have no guarantee, no special relationship with Hashem that tells us that we know this is going to turn the tide. But it doesn't feel satisfactory to me yet. In trying to understand this, so what that we can't be certain it will work. It still seems like a very worthwhile endeavor. It's a basic way that a Jew is supposed to respond when a fellow Jew is in crisis. And one way you could ask it is that obviously if there was a medical intervention that could be done for somebody in danger, even if there's only, let's say, a slight chance of that working, halacha definitely would say that you're obligated to pursue that avenue. Maybe it'll save the person's life. It's pikuach nefesh. So since there's a possibility, for sure we believe that the communal tefillah, if we get together and cry out Avinu Malkeinu, that it might turn the tide in Shemayim, why not pursue that? Why would Rabbi Yossi say not to try? Yes, there is a spirit of Shabbos that is important, but at least at first blush, the cost-benefit analysis, it was hard to understand here. Whatever downside there is to having a public prayer on Shabbos for this, that doesn't seem to outweigh, the importance of doing a tefillah, and maybe that will have an influence, will change the tide for the better in Shemayim. So I'd be very interested in what all of you think. How do you understand Rabbi Yossi? What is the, let's try to have a deep understanding of what Rabbi Yossi could mean, why he would say that we don't make an exception even in these cases where fellow Jews are in a great crisis. We will come back in a subsequent video based on the discussion we have together to present how we want to approach this problem. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.